Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome to the home to talk about movies. If you find that you're just in this constant state of having absolutely nobody that'll listen to you talk about your favorite movies, well, guess what? You no longer have that problem because now we got each other to do that because I have nobody to talk to about movies either. So let's engage in this parasocial relationship together. But yes, today we are not doing a movie review. We're doing something a little bit different in ranking the movies I got to see and experience at this year's Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas. So this was actually my first year attending the Fantastic Fest festival. It's always been a dream of ZakIsCinema here to attend a movie festival for fun and get to experience that festival life and culture, I guess, and experience all the movies there. So it is something I have always wanted to do for quite some time, and I finally had the opportunity. Just said fuck it, let's do it this year here. So before we get into the ranking here, I did only have the second stage or back half passes to the festival, so I believe I missed the first couple of days. So I missed out on some of the bigger movies, but luckily I was able to see a total of 13 different movies in the 4 days I attended the festival. So we are going to be taking a look at those 13 movies, ranking them from worst or my least favorite all the way to the best or my most favorite that I saw at this year's Fantastic Fest. So without further ado, I guess let's get into the ranking of everything I saw at this year's Fantastic Fest. So coming in at my last place or 13th place, we got Reflection in a Dead Diamond. Now, this was one of the foreign films I got to see this year. I believe I saw about 3 or 4. I'll have to double check that as we're kind of going through the list here. But my last place is, unfortunately, Reflection in a Dead Diamond. Now, I am just not the right person to be talking about this movie, unfortunately. I am 100% without a doubt not the person this movie was made for. I feel like I am way out of my league and small channel expertise to even be addressing or giving my thoughts on this movie, but I guess that's exactly what I'm gonna do either way. Even though I'm way out of it, I should not be talking about this movie. I just absolutely did not like or engage with this movie. However, at the same time, I could definitely see the type of person that would thoroughly enjoy this. If somebody came up to me and said this was one of their, if not their favorite movie of the festival, I'd be like, yeah, I understand it, and I wish I could appreciate it on that level, but unfortunately, I did not. This is a spy espionage thriller kind of movie, and to me, my first thought when I left this movie is, to me, it just felt all style over substance, unfortunately. It truly felt like a art house snobby film festival version of James Bond, and maybe that was just my bad expectations going into the movie, and I went in with the wrong expectations maybe, but I just had no interest in the character, story, or plot that this movie was trying to convey. To me, the movie would constantly jump back from flashbacks to the present day, then skip ahead to flash forwards and keep weaving in between all those 3 different time periods in these characters' lives, and to me, the storytelling was just so all over the place. It took me a second to even realize that that's what they were doing, because I don't think, to me, they did a good job at conveying that. So that just made it very difficult to pick up on the story, the characters, and everything that was going on, because I was just trying to keep track of everything, and it would just keep jumping without any warning or explanation. And obviously, with it being in a different language, that's not a critique on the movie, but just for my personal experience, that made it even more difficult to kind of follow. But from the general gist of the story and everything that I was getting from it, it seemed like a somewhat straight, simple story, movie told in such a overly complicated way that I really just struggled to engage with it. I struggled to find any interest in it, and unfortunately it was just one of those movies that I was just kind of waiting for it to end, looking forward to the next screening that I was going to be attending that day. So unfortunately for me, Reflection in a Dead Diamond does come in last at my Fantastic Fest ranking here. But yes, coming in at my number 12 spot, we got the movie Crushed. Now, to me, the movie Crushed, very similar to the last movie we were just talking about, Reflection of a Dead Diamond. This movie Crushed is just not, again, a movie made for me. I kind of made it a goal for myself, since this was my first year attending, to, try and stretch out of that horror, thriller genre of films and try to experience different films, especially some foreign films I really wanted to check out. So Crushed was one that I checked out, and, maybe it's coming in at this place because this was my last one, and 13 movies in 4 days is quite a lot. So I was just kind of getting to that point where I'm like, all right, I kind of need a break on movies, and this was just such a slow-paced movie that just did not connect with me at all, unfortunately. But at the same time, in no way is this a bad or poorly made movie. I really only think there's one movie on this list that I would consider poorly made. Just this movie is not for me, but again, I could see the person that would really, really enjoy something like this. So if you enjoyed this, I'm not knocking you at all. I wish I had that experience that you did. This movie follows a religious family whose father in the family is a pastor at a local church, and his daughter ends up being trafficked and kidnapped while out one night looking for her lost cat. And then it ends up with the family engaging with the police, trying to find their daughter, while at the same time struggling with their faith, their belief in their religion, and having all that tested while something unspeakable was happening to their daughter at the same time. And kind of putting these characters in a position where their faith is being tested and doubted for the first time in these characters' lives. So it's a great, interesting story. It makes sense why this director would want to tell it. Just to me, I didn't engage with it because I don't think it works all that well as a movie, and I could see this more so being a really good book or novel or short story or something like that. I just think the movie didn't work as a movie because it's very, very slow, very deliberately slow, obviously, but with a missing person, human trafficking movie. I get that the movie wasn't maybe going for this, but there's just no intensity whatsoever to me, and I didn't engage with it on that level. The movie starts off with showing you exactly who these kidnappers and traffickers are. They constantly show you where the girl is, if she's in any trouble, in any pain, or exactly what's going on, shows you exactly where she is, if she's safe, everything like that. So there's no real build-up or mystery or culmination to a climax, so it didn't kind of work like a standard movie, at least to me. And I feel like since it revealed all that information so early on, I had all that information, and so I was just stuck there waiting for the characters to realize and figure out the information that I already knew and I already had. So I was just kind of waiting for people to figure out exactly what I already knew was going on. So I feel like on that side, it didn't work for me as a movie in that regards. A movie like this doesn't need to be, an intense thriller or anything, but to me the dialogue was just very, very slow and uninteresting, and they kind of keep repeating and having this repetitive dialogue of the dad in the family still believing, and then the mom having her faith tested, and it's revealed that she never really believed in God all that much and really just did it for her husband. And they keep driving that home to the point where the father's then having his faith tested too. So just the whole movie felt like the dad talking to the wife saying, "You don't believe in God," and then the wife being like, "How could I believe in a God when our daughter's missing?" And then that just kept happening happening until the end of the movie. And I'm like, okay, I get the point of this. You're not really making any new statements or anything new or big or different. And just the themes and messages felt so repetitive all throughout. So I just kind of felt myself not really engaging all that well. And just a movie that I would never really go back to. Didn't really have a good time with, unfortunately. So coming in at my number 12, we got the movie Crushed. Coming in at my number 11 spot, we got The Strangers Chapter 2. Now, this unfortunately was the movie I was alluding to when I said I think only one movie on this list of movies that I saw was the poorly made one, and Strangers Chapter 2 easily takes that place to me. And this was one of my later night screenings, I think at 11 or 11:30, but I believe this was on my first day, so I was still just like hyped and excited, and I found myself so bored and so tired in the movie, almost to the point where I was like falling asleep, and I felt so guilty. I'm like, holy shit, I'm at Fantastic Fest fighting for my life to stay awake because of The Strangers Chapter 2. I didn't have high expectations for this movie whatsoever. Just I thought after the awful first one that we kind of got that one out of the way with. I'm like, okay, they're doing like a soft reboot remake of the original Strangers, but they have this whole trilogy plan. Maybe they just had to do that for the setup and do something very, very similar. And now we're going to get to chapters 2 and chapter 3 and actually get to what the whole point of this trilogy is and what the filmmakers had planned out for us. But my God, was I thoroughly mistaken with that thought in mind. And after I got done watching this movie, I was just like, had this thought of what is the point of this trilogy? I truly do not understand how this got funded, greenlighted, and pushed forward with production. I could not imagine going to a studio and saying, hey, I have this idea for this 3-part remake of The Strangers, and then just kind of doing the same thing and not really adding anything new or different to it. I just don't understand what the point of this was. I would much rather this movie take big swings that didn't work instead of just playing it so safe and repetitive to the other Stranger movies that we already have. I'm failing to see the point of something like this. You know, it picks up right after our first one with our main character in the hospital, and she finds out what happened to her boyfriend, and then the whole movie is just her running away from all the different Strangers characters, and I guess the Strangers characters just trying to tie up their loose ends with this remaining couple. And 90% of the movie, there is no dialogue. It just 90% of the movie is basically the ending of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre with that main character running and screaming the final 10 minutes. Basically, the entirety of this movie, and it just got so tiring, repetitive, and straight up boring to me. Now that I'm talking about it too, it makes me question it even more, because the original Strangers movies, that original one, there's nothing too unique about it, but the kind of unique thing they try to do is make it very surface level. It's these group of killers, these group of strangers that just, hey, fuck it, randomly pick a home and kill who's ever in it. And we get that creepy line just when they're asking why they're doing this, and they just said, because you're here. Almost like questioning them, like, why wouldn't we do this? And that's all you kind of needed. So then when we get this new trilogy, I'm like, okay, they're gonna probably get rid of that idea and add more to the why, but they don't. At least not in these first 2 chapters. They're just still these random motivationless killers, and we have seen that time and time again. And when you're remaking something that already did that, there's no point in remaking that, because you're just copying and pasting the original's template. So they don't try to really add anything to our main character that we didn't know from the first chapter. They don't add anything to the Strangers or the town lore or any attempts at trying to expand this or justify its 3-part saga they're going for. And again, not that I even wanted lore or backstory to these strangers, because I feel like that kind of gets rid of the point and the creepiness and the eeriness of those original strangers, and how the movie starts off with, telling you that how many Americans like die just from random killings, so they kind of play up that true nature feeling to it. So not that I needed a point, but if you're gonna expand this into a literal franchise at this point, you gotta do something a little bit more or a little bit different. And again, this part 2 here extremely suffers from the part 2 problem in a trilogy, where it's just trying to bridge you from the first one to the second one. Like, it's like a 20-minute story stretched out into an hour and a half that neither advances the strangers, our main character, the town lore, doesn't really set up anything for part 3. There was a little bit of a teaser at the end for this one for part 3 that seemed kind of interesting where they were going, maybe, but this movie didn't really do anything to kind of help justify that in any sort of way. But to me, this movie just left me feeling so bored, and a movie, one of the only movies here that genuinely had me fighting to stay awake at a film festival, and I think that's just impressive in and of itself. So yes, coming in at my number 11 spot, we got The Strangers Chapter 2. Before I get into my next spot, I would say from this point on, these are movies I at least overall enjoyed. I think those bottom 3 were just movies I was waiting to get out of the theater and just literally walk around or just look forward to the next screening. So I would say from my number 10 spot all the way up are movies I enjoyed and could recommend to people and could see people enjoying them even more than I did. But with that said, coming in at my number 10 spot, we got the movie Coyotes. Now, Coyotes is definitely not a bad movie. Just, even despite what I just said, I could still recommend this one. Just unfortunately, this was one of the more disappointing movies and disappointing experiences I had. Again, not a bad movie, just very disappointing, and felt like it kind of wasted its potential and setup. I feel like it had such a great premise, with this being labeled as a creature feature monster horror movie with coyotes and Justin Long, and I'm like, oh my god, this sounds awesome. I'm surprised more people aren't talking about this. They had posters out and shit for it. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I gotta get my tickets for this. This seems like it's gonna be a lot of fun, at least. And to me, it just kind of failed to deliver on that fun initial premise. The coyote gore, action, and carnage is very well done, and there is some very graphic scenes. However, it was disappointing to kind of see the coyotes being CGI. Even though the CGI isn't terrible, I wish we got some more practical effects. And throughout the movie, we do just get a lot of cutaways or after the math kind of shots of the coyote carnage and gore, which is just disappointing in a movie that's clearly going to be rated R. And not that I need a very interesting story here, just the story they go with is almost non-existent. It's a very cliche story of Justin Long being this workaholic father, being this very distant husband and father to his family due to his work, and then through these events of these coyotes, he learns he needs to be more present with his family, and then steps up to kind of save everybody in the end. So a story that we have seen a million times before, but if you do that well, it's still an effective story, I think, to me. But they just don't deliver on that, because it's really ultimately about 20% of the movie, and just kind of, they play it up a little bit in the beginning, hammer it home at the end, but in the middle, they fail to really do anything more to make that a little bit more captivating or interesting. The rest of the time, the characters are basically walking around their property. They see an angry coyote and say, oh my god, is that a coyote? And then the coyote growls, and then they start running. Like, that is the entire movie. And we actually spend a large portion of the movie cutting away from Justin Long and his family with this neighbor character who is fucking this hooker throughout the movie and busy trying to find his cat that is clearly dead. And a lot of the humor with him and his interactions with Justin Long and his family just did not land for me, did not land for my theater. This was one of the quieter reactions and experiences I had at Fantastic Fest, unfortunately. So it left me feeling disappointed because I feel like it wasted its really cool premise and something that could be a lot of fun. And, I've never seen a creature feature starring coyotes, so I thought it would be an easy home run here, but not a bad movie. Just it felt like it could have done a lot more, but a very easy watch. Definitely, if it's on streaming, definitely check it out. I could see people enjoying it a little bit more than I did here. But coming in at my number 10 spot, we got the movie Coyotes. But coming in at my number 9 spot, we got the movie Deathgasm 2. This might be higher for some people. I could see it being lower for some people too. Just for me, I've never seen the original one, but it was one that I've always heard about, and I believe the first one a couple years back did premiere at Fantastic Fest and heard it was a big hit and everything. And to me, I'm very much into horror, very much into specifically horror and comedy when they mash together. I love gore and carnage heavy movies. And, I heard about this movie and the premise where it relies a lot on practical effects, and heard that's what the first one was and delivered very well on. And I'm like, oh my God, this could be a really fun, good time at the movies. I definitely want to check it out. Just some schlocky, over the top, trying to offend you horror comedy with a bunch of gore and practical effects and profanities and stuff. I'm like, this could be really, really cool. And basically, the movie does deliver on a lot of that. It's basically a movie about a drunk, burnt out heavy metal artist who I believe is the main character of the first one. Picks up right after the first one, where half of his band members had passed away when they were trying to fight and save the world in that one. But our main character here still needs some money, still wants to be playing heavy metal music, so he decides to resurrect his old bandmates to play rock and roll again and enter this competition. And then basically stuff erupts and goes wrong from there, from his two friends that he resurrected and brought back. And all this demon and hell stuff starts breaking loose all over Earth, and it's up to our bandmates, half alive, half dead, to save everybody here. So it has such a fun, lighthearted kind of premise there that doesn't take itself too seriously, even though it's a serious thing when it's just written out on paper like that. It has a lot of cool, gross out moments, tons of amazing practical gore, which was awesome to see, and a good pacing that just kind of keeps the movie chugging along. And I think on top of the gore and violence that you go to for a movie like this, like I said, there's some good shock value moments, and sometimes with movies like these, it could just be shock value for shock value. I don't think they overdid it anyway, but there is some really good shock value moments that really landed for me. If you've seen it, there's this glory hole scene that just had my theater give a big reaction to. There's people moving in their seats, just kind of squirming. I was definitely very uncomfortable in a good way, and just had a big physical reaction to that. And I was very happy I was done eating during that scene there. And to me, the whole movie just kind of felt like a mix of Evil Dead 1 and 2 mixed with the premise and humor of a stoner comedy like Pineapple Express, for example. However, the reason it's coming in at this place for me is just a lot of the jokes and humor fell very, very flat to me and kind of got old very quick. It felt like a more dumbed down version of humor from Pineapple Express, where that movie's already purposefully stupid and dumb, but it felt like an even more dumber version of that. And so initially I was kind of with it, but then when it kept doing humor and jokes like that, it just kind of got old and stale to me very quickly. quickly. And to me, I'm not a big heavy metal rock kind of guy, so I could see if you're more into that music scene, you might appreciate this movie significantly more than I did. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind, maybe why I didn't appreciate it as much as maybe you did. Either way, still had a decent time with Deathgasm 2 here, so that is why it is coming in at my number 9 spot. But coming in at my number 8 spot, we got the movie Dolly. Now, Dolly is definitely one of these movies that I could see really changing on my ranking list here. It's one that I do want to watch again, and I feel like I do need to watch it again just to really solidify how I feel about it, because I think I went into it not knowing anything, literally just the title. I didn't even know it was a horror slasher killer movie. So this movie, Dolly, is about a couple who goes hiking in the woods, comes across this creepy doll setup in the woods with a couple dead bodies, and then this killer dressed as a porcelain doll comes out, kills one of the couples, and then keeps the other captive in their hut or cabin in the woods. So it's one of those movies that kind of sounds cliche with more of a unique killer and a unique killer look that you haven't seen before, and that's essentially what it is. And that's why I feel like I kind of want to rewatch it again just to see how I really feel about it. But on my first time watch here, this is definitely just a very serious, tonally dark, gnarly, grim, and just depressing movie. So if you like that just plain simple fucked up killer horror movie, I think you will definitely adore this movie, because it definitely had that effect on me where I just kind of felt gross and sad after. And obviously I think that's what the movie was going for, so I think it definitely succeeded with that. It is shot on film and looks absolutely stunning. It did look really amazing in the theater. I think all the acting was incredible, and the violence felt just so real and gnarly. It never goes into a full-blown splatterfest, but there is consistent violence and gore that is done just so realistically. There's a lot of stuff with Jaws in the movie, and it looks fucking real, and it definitely just like churned my stomach at some points. To me, it kind of felt like a mix of Barbarian and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, especially with the character of Leatherface. I could see this being a distant relative or first cousin to Leatherface with the Dolly Killer. I also really liked the Dolly Killer. I liked her look. I like how she was portrayed as this mother figure that was also so visceral, strong, and violent. I liked her doll setup in the woods and how just creepy that would be stumbling upon something like that. I liked her creepy Evil Dead cabin she had set up deep into these woods as well. It was a great isolated setting that I think succeeded very well. However, to me, the reason why I want to rewatch it again, and maybe why it's kind of right in the middle here on my list, is because I feel like that cliche plot line of the almost misunderstood, where obviously what they're doing is wrong and messed up, but they essentially, this Dolly character captures these girls, I guess, to preserve their innocence and literally try to treat them as a baby and pretending to be their mother to really like baby and nurture them. So what they're doing is wrong, but because they might have this mental illness, what they're trying to do, they have their good intentions and their fucked up view of it, and trying to be a mother figure to these people that they capture. I feel like you've seen stuff like that before, like in Barbarian. When we get to it in VHS, there's a short that does it like that, and it felt just like a female version of Leatherface to me. So I felt like if it was going to go that route, I wanted a little bit more development and lore to the character of Dolly to really make her stand out on her own. They did hint at a sequel at my screening. The director was there, so maybe that is their plans moving forward here which I'll definitely check that out. I definitely had a very good time with this. But at the same time, I think it's at my middle spot here too, because it's just like, I want to rewatch this, but I got to be in the right mood. I'm not just going to like sit down and casually throw on the movie Dolly. So definitely one I want to rewatch. Definitely has a place to really change spots on this list. So very cool, interesting movie. I'm not sure when it's going to get a release, but if that sounds interesting, definitely check it out, because I think most people will really enjoy it. So my number 8 spot, we got the movie Dolly. But coming in at my number 7 spot, we got the movie Crazy Old Lady. Now, this was another Spanish foreign film that I pushed myself to go check out, and I thought it had such a cool, unique, interesting premise. In the movie Crazy Old Lady, we follow this woman who is on a trip with, I believe, her son or daughter, and she ends up sending her ex-boyfriend or ex-partner to go check on her elderly mother who has some sort of dementia going on. And once she sends her ex-boyfriend there, we kind of find out there's more going on to this crazy old lady. We find out that she had killed the nurse that is taking care of her in her home, and ends up capturing this ex-partner of her daughter, ties him up, and starts to believe that he is some ex-lover that she had that nobody knew about. Her daughter didn't know about, her dad didn't know about, nobody knew about this ex-lover. But when she's captured this boyfriend and starts having conversations with him, we get to find out more and more about this crazy old lady and why she's doing what she's doing, and she has dementia and memory loss. So crazy things happen all throughout the movie, and this, to me, I had a really, really enjoyable time with this. I think with this movie, it gives you a great, tense, isolated thriller that has a unique way of revealing this crazy old lady's history and past relationships through the dialogue, the torture scenes, the interactions going on with these characters when crazy old lady is talking, when she remembers what's going on and, is apologizing, but then quickly forgets and reverts back to her crazy psycho self. We get to find out a little bit more. So it's just an interesting way to kind of tell a story like this. It felt very similar to, obviously, a book Stephen King would write. Reminded me a lot of the book and movie Misery, but almost with a dementia and family twist to it, which I thought was really interesting. I think there's some really good gore, some good violence, some great dialogue, a great simple premise, fantastic acting too. The actress that plays the crazy old lady, I think she does such a fantastic job of not going too over the top, but being entertaining and wild. She does a great job of when she's kind of out of that dementia state, but then kind of jumps back into it. There's a cool scene where she kind of gets out of her dementia state, goes up to get a key, and then comes back down in her different personality, which I thought was just so cool. So the movie has great bits and scenes like that sprinkled throughout. But I think for me, it's coming in at this spot just because the ending isn't bad. It just felt like such a dud for what was a fantastic movie and what I was enjoying with. So it just kind of left me with that dud of an ending. I felt like they could have done a lot more with the ending, and it felt like it didn't really wrap anything up and just kind of left it open-ended, when a movie like this, I don't think, benefited from that open ending kind of story. That was a little bit disappointing, and I do kind of wish they developed the relationship a little bit more with the crazy old lady and her daughter. I know that's kind of hard when they're kind of separated and the crazy old lady has dementia and then all this other stuff going on, but I think that would have helped with the emotional side to the movie a little bit more. But overall, fantastic movie. Definitely recommend checking this out, and I'm curious to see if people have maybe different opinions on the ending and maybe got something newer or different from it compared to ZakIsCinema here. But yes, coming in at my number 7 spot, we got the movie Crazy Old Lady. But coming in at my number 6 spot, kind of cheating a little bit, but we got the fantastic shorts that they displayed here. So I believe this was a set of 10 to 11 different short films, not an anthology kind of series, nothing connected, but just 10 random shorts that I got to check out here. And this was very interesting. This was another one I kind of pushed myself to do because honestly, I have very little experience with short films other than, the handful of short films I've seen on YouTube and popular ones like that. So getting to experience short films in a theatrical setting was just so unique, so cool. They had tons of the producers, directors, and actors all sprinkled throughout the theater that got to do a panel a little bit later on afterwards, which was just so awesome to hear their experiences and why they told the stories that they did. So the short films are a little bit harder for me to talk about, so I was just going to kind of briefly mention a couple of my favorite ones here, but had a great time with these set of short films and kind of wish that I got to experience more of them at the festival. But there's a great one called Question the Deadbolt, which the director described as like an intrusive thought of wondering if his apartment key would work on other apartments in his apartment complex, since every apartment was made at the same time. They all look the same. Everything's the same. So why wouldn't your key work on other people's doors? Have you tried it? Like stuff like that, which I thought was just so funny, creepy, and got you kind of thinking. There's a really funny short called Giant Skeleton that just got a huge reaction out of my theater that I had a blast with. There's a really awesome action one called Floor with this couple and their noisy upstairs neighbor, and then the boyfriend of this couple goes up there to confront them, and you get these great, visceral, highly stylized, extremely fast-paced action set pieces in this apartment complex, which was just so fantastic. And he was there too, so we got to ask him some questions too, and that was a great short film. That one was definitely one of my favorites. There was an extremely funny one called Wall Utter. I don't want to say too much about it because I think you should just go in and experience that. I'm not sure if they're going to be posted on YouTube or somewhere else, but Wall Utter was hilarious, and the director and actor there was at the festival as well. And then there was this really emotional, just sad short film called Sammy Who Can Detach His Body Parts. And when it first started, I'm like, oh, this is a little weird. I don't think this one's gonna land for me all that well. But then as it kept going, and as you kind of see what the themes and messages of the short is, it really hit home for me a little bit. It's all about this character that just kind of gives and gives and gives to everybody, but nobody takes time to really kind of give to that person, and you kind of see where he ends up because he gave so much away. And it was told in such a simple but unique and creative way, which I thought was amazing. So the set of short films I saw coming in at my number 6 spot. But yes, coming in at my number 5 spot, we got the movie Primate. And I believe the movie Primate actually has a release date coming out this January, I believe. So definitely be on the lookout for Primate. I had a really great time with this one. And to me, this was the movie that I was expecting the movie Coyotes to be. This movie is doing a creature feature monster movie. You know, it has that premise of having a real life animal with, in this case, an ape, and showing what could go wrong when people try to mess with nature. And again, even though this movie follows kind of that cliche story of, again, very similar to Coyotes, of a dad leaving his girls on this business trip that he's doing, because I believe he's an author, leaving them alone at the home with this ape and a couple of the girls' friends, and he's very obsessed and distant with work. And I think this movie does just such a better job at kind of focusing on that story, that family dynamic, those character interactions. That it's not the most emotional, grandiose story that I've ever seen, but they at least make you care about it just enough to make you kind of want to stick through the rest of the movie. Again, like I said, this is a movie about a family who has this pet ape that the family's mother was taking care of because she was a scientist, and the mother actually ended up passing away. So the family's kind of working together to take care of this ape, not only because the ape is considered part of their family, but they kind of want to carry on their mother's legacy as well. So has that great initial sweet premise that kind of gets you invested in everything. And then ends up in the beginning of the movie, the ape ends up getting bit and getting rabies, and then starts trying to pick off the family and friends one by one. And the movie just kind of goes on from there. To me, it kind of felt like the Planet of the Apes movies, if the apes, instead of getting injected with something that made them smarter and gaining humanity, it's like if they got injected with something that made them even more primal and animalistic and lost all their humanity and morals. And we kind of get to see that play out. So it's like a reverse Planet of the Apes almost. And I think it was just such a fantastic version of that. Fantastic gore. I was surprised with how much gore and animal violence there is in this movie. Great practical effects. The CGI on the ape looked incredible. Tons of tense scenes throughout. And even though the story's kind of cliche, I think to me it had some pretty shocking, great character deaths as well that just made me kind of surprised and made me feel like anybody could be taken out at any second, which I think really helped with the intensity and story that this movie was going for. So I really enjoyed this. Really great pacing, really great simple story, and just a fun movie too that had great acting in it. Like I said, all the ape stuff was absolutely amazing. Just to me, I wish that they spent a little bit more time developing the relationship with the ape and with the family to make me kind of really care about that relationship, so that way when the ape ends up getting rabies, it just feels way more devastating than it kind of came off. Like when I was watching, I'm like, oh yeah, that's sad, but let's kill this ape, you know? So I thought that was a bit of a missed opportunity, because I thought they could have really hammered home that just betrayal, loss, and grief that the family should have been feeling with the ape here. But overall, despite that, great movie. Definitely check it out when it's out in theaters. I think it is worth going out to theaters for. So definitely check out Primate when it comes out here, because Primate is coming in at my number 5 spot. But coming in at my number 4 spot, we got the movie Vicious. Now, Vicious is a psychological, cursed horror movie starring Dakota Fanning. And I think, to me, one of the best parts of this movie is just its great initial inciting incident where Dakota Fanning's character gets a knock on the door, and this creepy old lady shows up with this box and explains to her that she needs to take this box, put in 3 things: one thing that she loves, one thing that she needs, and one thing that she hates. And if she doesn't do it, bad things will happen. If she tries to escape and tell someone, awful things will happen. If she puts something in the box that doesn't fulfill what the truth actually is, the box will reject it and something bad will happen. So I think that just great initial inciting incident is great for a mystery, great for a horror and thriller and psychological movie as well that this movie was going for. And I think one of my favorite things that this movie did is that initial premise really just kind of, it gets you hooked into the story, but then it just allows the rest of the movie to be this character study almost of Dakota Fanning's character, because as she's struggling to find something that she loves, hates, and needs, we're finding out all this information about her. So when she puts something in the box that solidifies its answer, we get to find out the truth about her. If she puts something in the box that the box kind of rejects because it knows it's not the truth, we get to find out a little bit more about her. If she's struggling to find something or doesn't want to put something in there, we find out a little bit more about her as well. So I just thought that was such a great hook and mystery, but also sets up our character to be really good. And I think that's always so important in a horror movie like this. And I think it also benefits to allowing the movie to not really need a lot of exposition, because the premise just allows our character to reveal more about themselves without them just telling us or telling the audience. I think there are some fantastic scares in here, some really well done jump scares. It's not a gory movie, but the couple of gore scenes that they have are so visceral, shocking, and you feel it. You get that kind of physical reaction. You're just like, oh God, that made me so uncomfortable. So I really did enjoy this. I was kind of hearing some mixed things at the festival, which I was kind of surprised about. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I guess I do kind of understand where some people are coming from, because essentially this is a cursed movie, very similar to maybe like The Grudge or The Ring or Smile. So it kind of follows that similar premise, but I think it's just such a well done version of it. I think Dakota Fanning is fantastic. All the scares were set up really well. It has a creepy, eerie atmosphere to it. I really enjoyed the ending and that last note it kind of left off on, which was just so creepy, eerie, and unsettling. And I think really my only big complaint is because it's that standard cursed movie, I wish they did a little bit more unique, interesting, and different. Not over explaining it, but I needed something a little bit more to kind of help this stand out on its own, because it just kind of falls into that category of being, a good version, but a good version of one of those movies. But I'm not sure if this one has a release date. Definitely check it out. I really enjoyed it, and we'll probably go check it out again in theaters. So my number 4 is Vicious. But coming in at my number 3 spot, we got the movie Don't Leave the Kids Alone. Now, this one was the first Spanish foreign film that I got to see at festivals. So again, just trying to push myself to experience more of those, and I'm so happy I did, especially because the director was in attendance there and did a Q&A, so I thought that was really awesome. And again, one of those horror psychological movies that has a great initial premise, where in this story there is a single mom with 2 younger boys, and she is going out to this party to meet someone, but also engage in some sort of business deal that she's working on that we get to find a little bit more about as the story progresses. Last minute, her babysitter cancels for her 2 sons, and then she decides last minute that she just has to leave her kids home alone, and then story plays out from there, kind of showing the worst possible night that could happen when your kids are home alone, and what I imagine is every parent's absolute worst nightmare of what is happening at home when you're not there. And I think this is such a great premise for a horror and thriller movie, and almost something everybody can kind of relate to growing up, because I feel like most people have been left home alone last minute kind of like this, or maybe left home alone before they felt ready, or maybe left home alone and something bad almost happened, or something bad really did happen. And I definitely relate to that. I remember one time my parents left me and my 2 other siblings home alone, and then my sister was messing around with my brother and decided to pretend to kick him in the face and ended up kicking him in the face, knocking out 2 of his front teeth, and my parents had to come home. So, luckily everyone was fine, and worse things happened to these kids in the movie here, but I just relate to that because it was a scary thing when you're really little and just seeing your brother's teeth get kicked out. So I loved the initial premise, something I related to, something the director felt very personal about, talking about his experiences being left home alone with his siblings as well. And I think this is a story where it blends some good humor with the interactions with the 2 boys, those siblings there. It intertwines some great scares and intensity, but also introduces a mystery and demonic edge with the home that they have recently moved into. I loved everything with the 2 boys left home alone, and I think both of those kid actors did a fantastic job, where I 100% bought that they were siblings and would have just assumed that they actually were siblings in real life. And the way that they would talk with each other, fight with each other, but you could tell there was still a love and connection between them, is again just something I very personally related to. To me, I think the only negative to this movie is I think just the storyline with the mom at the party is very important, but it just kind of felt slow and uninteresting, and anytime it cut back to that, I was just waiting to get to the home with the 2 boys. And the stuff she finds out about the home at the party wasn't this like big revelation that I thought maybe the movie thought that it was going to be. I thought it was pretty obvious, so that was a little disappointing, but the movie really makes up for it at its ending. It's such a dark, grim ending that I wasn't expecting. I could see it going that way. I didn't think they would go that way, but when the movie just went for it, it really goes for it and leaves you on such a downer note that really just works for the story it was telling. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So coming in at my number 3 spot, we got Don't Leave the Kids Alone. But coming in at my number 2 spot, kind of cheating again here, but we got the Creep Tapes Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3. Now, I only decided to check out the Creep Tapes Season 2 here because I believe another movie I was trying to get into, I couldn't get tickets for, and I was like, oh, fuck it, let me check out the Creep Tapes. I've seen the first 2 movies and do really enjoy them, but I'd never seen the first season of the Creep Tapes, so I was kind of worried I'd be left behind, not knowing what's going on, and, just wanted to go, so I just chose it, but I am so happy that I did choose it. We got Mark Duplass, which plays the creep guy. He was there in attendance and did a Q&A after, so I was just so happy and excited for that experience alone, and it was so cool because they announced to us that we were basically the test audience, that they hadn't shown these episodes to anybody in its entirety just yet, so I was kind of nervous if it didn't go so well, but luckily it did, and my theater had a great reaction and response to it, and I thoroughly enjoyed this to the point where I really want to go back and watch the first 2 movies again and definitely catch up on season 1. But these first 3 episodes were incredible, and then at the end they announced that they got a release date from Shudder literally that evening, and I believe they said the first episode is going to go out on November. So I'm not going to get too specific. I'm not going to get into too many spoilers here, but definitely check it out when it goes out on Shudder. But to me, it was just such a great experience, and if you love the Creep movies, and I'm assuming the first season, I think you're going to absolutely adore this second season, filled with just so many creepy moments, funny moments, uncomfortable moments, humorous moments, and just great simple ideas stretched to their full potential. And I think the first episode, they have kind of a surprise guest cameo, but not really a cameo because they're in it throughout the episode, that my theater had this huge reaction to that just elevated that first episode. So I thought that was awesome. The second episode was easily my favorite with how funny and unsettling it was. And it almost leans into a parody version of the movie Saw, and it kind of plays out from there. And my theater biggest reaction of the festival was with the Creep Tapes episode 2, so that one was my favorite. The third episode, probably my least favorite out of the 3, but still a great episode that kind of switches up the Creep Tapes traditional formula that I think worked really, really well, and again, very funny. Mark Duplass is a terrific actor, and just, it seemed like every episode he was getting more and more confident with the character he was playing, and just their premises just kept really going for it. And I thought maybe it'd get a little bit repetitive seeing 3 episodes back to back to back, but thoroughly enjoyed it. I could have sat through the whole season if they decided to show it. So I'm so happy I checked this out. Definitely check out the Creep Tapes Season 2. Even if you're not a fan of the movies, I'd still recommend it because I think they are fantastic. I mean, it's my number 2 here. Coming in, number 2, we got Creep Tapes Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3. But we did it, everybody. We have made it to our number 1 here. And coming in at my number 1 for Fantastic Fest this year, I got VHS Halloween. Now, I am so happy I got to get a ticket for VHS Halloween. It was a hard one to get into. I think I was originally planning to see the Sisu sequel, but I kept refreshing because I really wanted to check out VHS Halloween because the trailers just seemed so cool and it was getting some buzz. And I'm like, I gotta check this out. And I kept refreshing. Luckily, a ticket popped up. I snagged that, and the standout line, there was a bunch of people standing out there waiting for VHS Halloween. Halloween. So happy I got a chance to check out VHS Halloween. And to me, I've really, if I'm being honest here, I've only seen the first VHS movie, which is surprising because I do love found footage and I really do enjoy anthology series and anthology movies. And I think now seeing this, I love them even more, and I definitely want to check out the rest of the VHS franchise. I think there's like 10 of them, if I'm not mistaken, with like 2 other spin-offs or something. So honestly, when I got done watching this, I'm like, oh my God, I think I'd like to dedicate the month of October of just covering the VHS movies. So I think that's what we're going to do on the channel here. So if you're a fan of VHS, look out for those videos. I want to go through the rest of the franchise, but there was a bunch of people coming out of my theater saying that was easily the best VHS movie. So it got me excited to check out the rest of them, but then I'm like, oh God, if that was the best one, I don't want to sit through 9 other like duds. But I don't know, I tend to enjoy anthology and found footage than I feel like the most people, I guess I would say. So I'm excited to check those out. But this VHS movie was incredible, where it was my favorite of the festival, at least for right now. And I think the Halloween edge and theme to the movie really surprised me that they haven't tried that before, but fit so perfectly in every single short film that they had in here. And I've heard with some of the VHS movies, like every VHS movie at least has like 1 or 2 really good ones, and the rest not so much. But with this one, they all hit for me. They all hit for the theater, and I just had a absolute blast. And I think it comes out in a week or 2, so I'm not going to get into too many specifics, but all of them I really enjoyed. The first one is called Coochie Coochie Coo, and that kind of takes a similar premise to what I was talking about with the movie Dolly, and then also bits and pieces of Barbarian, where you kind of get this killer with that more nurturing vibe, trying to capture people and take care of them as her children. All takes place in this creepy haunted house that characters think they're just trick-or-treating at, and it goes from there, full of gross out moments, funny moments, unsettling haunted house kind of vibe that was absolutely fantastic. Great effects as well. And the second one, I'm not sure how to say the Latin name here, but I believe it translates to As Above, So Below, which is also another name of a really interesting found footage movie as well. I thought this one was really creepy. I loved how it was told, from jumping back and forth from the footage of the night of the incident, and then also footage of the police investigation going on with the current investigation. Creepy possession film, but also a great mystery intertwined with everything. Fun size was easily the best one out of all of them. Got the biggest reaction from my theater, and just one that I enjoyed the most. It is so creative, weird, and unique. It was like a fantasy nightmare version of people trick-or-treating, but also experiencing some fucked up fever dream as well. And it just had a great blend of creepy premises, but also shock value and humor that works so well. So Fun Size is definitely one people are going to be talking about once it releases on Shudder. Kid Print was definitely my least favorite. Not a bad one, just it goes for more of that ultra serious, just fucked up and grim tone that I thought the other ones didn't really go for. They're all very serious, but kind of introduce that humor and gross outside to some things, but this one's just straight serious and fucked up. So I was surprised they went for that very serious tone, but at the same time, I think it is a kind of a nice break from all the more fun ones that they got going on. And it ends up with our last one called Home Haunt, which I thought just had a cool story, a sweet story, and then ends with something like fucked up as well. Again, with that theme of trick-or-treating in a neighborhood, a lot of them kind of tie together with that. And it really ended off on a note that stuck with that Halloween theme that this VHS movie was going for. And I love the frame narrative called Diet Phantasm. It's about these people doing these studies on this soda that they're trying to sell, and it just kind of goes from there. Absolutely fucked up, great effects, great practical effects, so over the top, so funny as well. But to me, I loved it, but I really kind of wish the framing device here kind of tied the themes and stories a little bit more together. I didn't need them to connect or have this grand revelation of what we were watching, and now makes a little bit more sense because of the framing narrative. It felt like another short that they had that they just decided to split up in like 4 or 5 chunks and sprinkle in between. So it didn't work as a framing device for me, even though it was a really good short. And then the director was kind of explaining at the end that, yeah, he didn't really want to go for, a framing device that connected everything or explained, what these VHS tapes were, who was watching them, why are they watching them. And it's very apparent with that framing narrative. Just, I think if you're going to use a framing narrative, it needs to at least kind of tie something together and not just feel like another short that you just kind of chopped up, if that makes sense. But even despite that, absolutely fantastic. I love this movie so much. Can't wait to rewatch it and show it to people. So coming in at my number 1 for Fantastic Fest 2025 is VHS Halloween. Oh my God, that was a long one here. I think I've been recording over an hour here. I'm so tired of talking. But that was the movies that I saw at this year's Fantastic Fest. So happy, so excited that I got to experience a movie festival. I cannot wait to go back again and hopefully check out way more than 13. Hopefully get into more movies that I really wanted to see and get into some more of those secret screenings as well. The only disappointing thing from this experience is I couldn't get into Shelby Oaks. I was trying so hard. I waited in that line forever. I tried and I failed. I really wanted to see Shelby Oaks, but despite that, just such a cool experience attending a movie festival. Now that I'm home now, I kind of miss the routine of Fantastic Fest, of waking up, checking the schedule for the next day and trying hard to get tickets for the movies that I want to see and kind of planning my day around it. So tons of fun. If you've never been, if you have the ability to go, I'd highly recommend it. I'm hopefully going to go again next year and, hopefully make this a yearly thing here on the channel with the vlog and then the ranking. But please let me know if you went to Fantastic Fest as well. What movies did you check out? Did you see any that I did? Let me know your thoughts on this year's showings. Let me know your personal ranking or just the movies you checked out or some of your favorites. If you agree or disagree with my list here, I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts and feelings on that. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos because it does mean a lot to me. So thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.